Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Catholic Coffee Talk, a podcast where in between sips, we answer your Catholic questions. I'm your host, Father Brad Doyle, and I have with me our resident good Catholic, Peter Gone. By the way, resident, you live at the Catholic company?
Yeah, they won't let me leave.
That's a problem. How are things going, man?
Tradition demands that I say I'm doing pretty well. But in truth, I am doing pretty well. Again, second in a row. No real.
Can't beat them. Can't get them down.
Things are good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. He promises you'll be happy.
Oh, man.
So I just got confirmation that I'm going to have a trivia. I'm resurrecting bar trivia with Father Brad, not the podcast.
Not doing the old podcast. Okay.
Not the old podcast, but I am going to integrate my love of trivia, my love of community events, and my love of bars and whiskey into my parish. So get my parishioners together at a little bar called the Oyster Bar, which doesn't currently sell oysters, but it's in Bayou Sara, Louisiana, which is down the hill from my parish, where the old town used to be. The old town is called Bayou Sara. Is one of
I think you told us about that. That same.
Yeah, I told you about it. So now it floods every year. So the parish president bought the Oyster Bar, and it's just a cinder block building with like some stuff that they can just quickly get out once the flood season starts, and then they just power wash it whenever it goes down, and they open the bar back up. And so they're looking for things to happen in it. And I said, hey, how about we lead bar trivia with the Padre once a month. So the first Thursdays of the month, I'll be leading bar trivia down in Bayou Sara, Louisiana. Nice. Come join.
That's awesome.
If ever you're in town. So I'm excited about that. And I just love doing things that kind of integrate all my passions, my loves, it's really nice. So, and there will be questions at the bar trivia, right? There'll be questions.
I would assume.
Yeah, I'm asking questions. And you asked us some questions. And you're percolating. Those questions are percolating. So it's time for what's percolating. Where the questions percolating in your head get answers from the church's tradition.
We live in a tumultuous age, and sin is multiplying like never before. But Christ has sent a message of divine mercy to call all of us back to Him. The Divine Mercy Devotion is God's message for these times, and we need to listen. That's why Good Catholic has put together a new series on the Divine Mercy Devotion. Our goal is to give you the guidance and spiritual tools you need to encounter God's profound mercy, embrace penance, and obtain greater peace and happiness. Our Divine Mercy series has video reflections by Father Ken Geraci that guide you to a deeper understanding of Divine Mercy, articles that reveal what true mercy is, what we need to do about it, along with daily email reminders delivered straight to your inbox to help you stay on track. Sign up today at goodcatholic.com or click the link in the show notes.
What we got?
So we had a question from Vanessa that, on a personal note, just kind of really struck me in the heart, and I thought it was really, really worth getting to. So Vanessa asks, why should I have to go to confession even one time a year when it's a trigger for me due to past abuse? And she goes on to say that she wasn't abused by a priest and that she's in therapy, she's, seeking help, and she's trying to, move through her wounds. But then she goes on and just asks, surely Jesus must understand my pain and not force me to go, right?
So Vanessa, a very honest and truthful question, and really just feel honored for you to bear your heart out for other people too, because I think it's important when people ask questions, you got to know there's other listeners who experience the same thing.
I know people who have been in a similar situation where, again, it may not be the fault of the priest or the Catholic Church generally, but that for one reason or another, that going into the confessional is more than just uncomfortable.
It's a little deeper than that. It's not just avoidance of something that's hard. It's there's some kind of diagnosable situation. Yeah. So to answer your last question though about whether Jesus understands, Vanessa, yes, of course he understands. Like he knows your heart. He created you. He knows everything you've gone through, and certain situations, particularly ones like you're experiencing, could play a factor in someone's obligation to go to confession, or whether they're held culpable for not going and not fulfilling that obligation. So obviously, culpability is lessened, maybe drastically lessened, if someone is experiencing some sort of duress that stops them from fulfilling one of these obligations. It is an obligation for everyone. Um, just like going to mass is an obligation for everyone, but there are other extenuating circumstances that can, abrogate us from those. Or um, so I guess I want to start by saying the obligation isn't removed for anyone, but it could be, uh, I guess, changed, or our experience of it, or our culpability for not fulfilling it could be affected, especially with someone who's in a situation you
Mhm.
are in. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, it's not that the obligation is waived, but um, that it's not like Jesus doesn't care about the situation. He says, no, he has to go no matter what. Yeah, you know.
hmm Yeah, and so I think it's healthier to approach confession as something uh, a gift you get to receive, rather than something you have to fulfill,
Right.
which is hard for people. And look, I'm not begrudging someone who's not at that position, but that's the goal, is to see confession as a gift we receive, like something we get, rather than something we have to do. And that the have to do and the things we get sometimes are synonymous.
Right.
Like love, we have to do love. We have to love people, but it's also like a gift, and it's a
Yeah.
benefit. It's good for us. So in fact, our goal in life is to marry those two, for those things to coincide, so we don't feel the sting of obligation. Right? We just feel the joy of the gift. It's really hard. I mean, it's hard to
Yeah.
do that. That's a
Easier said
whole
than done.
Christian life.
Yeah.
But
But I think it's good to
that's
keep
where
in
we
mind.
want to go.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's many different gifts that people struggle to receive because of trauma. Like, so some of the vocational gifts, I think of like marriage or priesthood, right? Someone might be called to priesthood. They have the gift of that vocation, but not everyone can fulfill that gift or receive that gift because of maybe some privation. Again, privation doesn't have to be someone's fault. Let's say someone gets in a car wreck. They're called to be a priest. They're 18 years old, and tragically they're in a car wreck that affects their abilities to an extent where they could not live out the life of a priest, right? So their cognitive abilities or what have you. Um, that doesn't mean they weren't called to be a priest, but they can't fulfill that role because of some trauma they experienced. So, and then that's maybe something that's irreversible, but there are other traumas and psychological situations that could possibly, and you've already mentioned that, Vanessa, you're seeking out therapy. So I'm glad you're working. You want to be whole. You want to be, healed. But we should always seek out healing so that those gifts can be received.
Absolutely.
This would, I guess, an analogy would be, counseling before a marriage, to receive that vocation, that gift of marriage. A counseling that goes on to help someone be able to receive that gift is the goal we're going to. So I don't think we should just throw out confession altogether and say like, it's never going to be a thing for me, because God wants you to be forgiven and know you're forgiven. He can do anything he wants outside of the sacraments. He's not bound by the sacraments, but we have to assume we are. And so that is something that the Lord wants from you, because it is a great gift.
Right. And I think it's worth just hitting that point again about, not about the gift, but also that the Lord wants to give that forgiveness. Like he wants you to be forgiven. He wants you to know that you are forgiven beyond all shadow of a doubt, and that's what confession can do. And that's what confession is. And that is ultimately what the Lord wants. He's not seeking your suffering by forcing you to go into something that is traumatic or triggering or anything like that. But he also doesn't want you to live in fear for your soul. He doesn't want you to live in a state of sin, and even venial sin, even tiny little imperfections. He doesn't want that for you, because that ultimately leads to your suffering as well. So I just think
Another-
that's worth meditating on, like what God really wants in his infinite love and in his infinite mercy.
Mhm. Yeah, and another analogy I came up with is food and air, right? So breathing and eating, they are necessary. They're obligations, in fact, of the human existence. Even if someone might struggle with breathing or eating healthily
Mm-hmm.
because of some privation, they're still necessary,
Yeah.
right? So like that's not the goal. Like we still need it. So like the sacraments are like the lifeblood, the food, the breath of the Christian. It's the way we receive grace most perfectly, and how we can know we're receiving grace. So it's like breathing or eating, and people might struggle with breathing and eating, but we got to move and try to move past that. I think an idea, and I'm sure you've thought about this, Vanessa, before, but maybe find a regular confessor or a priest that you trust, so that, some people don't want to know their confessor. Some people like go out of their parish and like find the rando dude and behind, which is cool.
Yeah,
Go
that's why
do
it's
that.
there,
But some people might, uh, you know, find someone who they know and trust, just to
Yep.
kind of get rid of the possibility of the grumpy, hurtful confessor.
Right.
Priests are human beings, and so if you go into a random confessional and you already struggle with feeling triggered and you have trauma and stuff, like maybe just knowing that you trust this priest and that he knows your heart and is walking with you. He's a pastor, he's a friend, that could help and just maybe stave off some possible traumatic experiences. I don't know if you think that's.
I think that's pretty good advice. The other thing too, I mean, I can't make any promises for any priests out there, but I would think that if Vanessa, if you can find a priest that a priest that you trust, and to bring this up a little bit, just about like, hey, this is kind of what I'm dealing with, but I still want to try to confess. You might be able to work with him to find a way to do it in a way that isn't as triggering for you, whether that's
Not being in a box.
Right, not being in a box or outside or something. I don't know. And again, who knows what a priest can do? And I hope you have a priest that you feel like you can go to and that you can trust. But you might be able to do something just to help the environment, whether it's a location or a time of day or something, where you can kind of help, just help set it up to be a better environment for you, and then you can still receive the sacrament. And that requires that first huge step of trust and of courage to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, and can you please help me? And that's a hard thing to do, but it's a thing worth doing.
I think so, because it's a gift. It's not some obligation, just an obligation.
Right.
I kind of wanted to end by just quoting Isaac of Stella. He was in the Office of Readings a couple of days ago, and it just waylaid me in the face. I've read this many times because I've prayed the breviary, for 7 years straight, or 8 or 9, I don't know, whatever. Since I've been in seminary, praying the Office of Readings, and it's yearly, these readings. But it just hit me. I was like, this is in here. This guy was alive in like the 1100s. Okay. So this is a while back. And he presents at the beginning something that maybe a lot of people would want to agree with, maybe especially a lot of Protestants. But then he just completely presents the beauty of the church's teaching on confession. So this is it. He says, the prerogative of receiving the confession of sin and the power to forgive sin are two things that belong properly to God alone. Right? Every Protestant I know would be like, preach, preach it, Stella. And he goes, we must confess our sins to him and look to him for forgiveness, since only he has the power to forgive sins. It is to him that we must make our confession. Again, he's like, all the Protestants are like jacked. But when the Almighty, the Most High, wedded a bride who is weak and of low estate, he made that maidservant a queen. He took her from her place behind him at his feet and enthroned her at his side. She had been born from his side, and therefore he betrothed her to himself. And as all that belongs to the Father also belongs to the Son, because by nature they are one, so also the bridegroom gave all he had to the bride, and he shared in all that was hers. He made her one both for himself and with the Father, Praying for his bride, the son said to the father, I want them to be one with us, even as you and I are one. And so later he says, so all that belonged to the bride was shared by the bridegroom. And he who had done no wrong and on whose lips was found no deceit could say, have pity on me, Lord, for I am weak. Thus sharing as he did in the bride's weakness, and the bridegroom made his own cries of distress and gave his bride all that was his. The church is incapable of forgiving any sin without Christ, and Christ is unwilling to forgive any sin without the church. So that's a great statement, and it's wedding the power and authority to forgive sins in the way that God talks about it, which is nuptial, right?
Right.
So the church is the bride of Christ, and they're one flesh union.
Right.
And so he desires for that forgiveness to flow through the church, which is really cool.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, Stella, Isaac of Stella, which is a really cool name anyway, regardless of his great writing. But I love it. Maybe someone with twin boy and girl could.
Isaac and Stella. Yeah.
This is Isaac and Stella, and then you just preach forgiveness of sins for their whole life. That'd be cool.
Pretty good.
So anyway, you know what's a pick me up? Whenever I go to confession and I get my sins forgiven, I think we need a little pick me up right now. Not that kind, but the bean of the week.
Let's go for it.
So what's your bean today?
All right, I'm gonna completely sort of toot my own horn here. My pick me up this week.
Did you just say you're gonna toot? That's inappropriate. You're gonna toot?
I just wanted to let that sit in silence for a minute and not acknowledge it.
Okay, Peter, toot away.
All right. So this isn't just me. This is the kind of whole Good Catholic team. But we put together a couple of videos that we're calling Behind the Canvas. And it's basically, I don't know, it's an exploration of classic Catholic art. And I like in the concept, I know that doesn't sound all that interesting, but I'm really proud of what we've created. And we kind of walk through some kind of well-known, or even maybe not so well-known, like Catholic art from like the Renaissance and from, you know, the Counter Reformation, and just kind of walk through some of the symbolism and the history of it. And we do it in a way that we try to just meditate on the topic in a way that's helpful for people spiritually, while I kind of meditate, like as if you're sitting in front of the image and you're praying in front of it to meditate on its message, right? And we try to unlock some of the things that you wouldn't understand or wouldn't notice at first glance. So this is totally me trying to tell people how awesome the thing that I made and we made is, but honestly, I'm just proud of it. I think we did a good job, and our video producer, Zach, who's over there in the corner in this podcast studio, did an amazing job putting together all the visuals. And I just think we made something really cool, and people who've seen it have said really awesome things about it. So I just wanted to kind of give ourselves a shout out, which is a little weird, but honestly, it's been fun to create, and I'm proud of it. So that's my beam.
Ooh, I just looked it up. Here we go. Behind the Campus.
We have 2 out right now, and we're working on more. It will be a regular thing.
So it's a video. Raphael's other masterpiece, the Disputation of the Holy Sacrament, which is fantastic. And you go Caravaggio, one of my faves.
Yep.
One of my faves. Wow, y'all should go check that out.
We only got the 2 right now, but we got more coming down the line. So yeah, I'll link to one of them or both of them or something.
Can y'all do a Behind the Campus on my the art I created when I was in kindergarten?
That's gonna be number 3, actually.
Okay, cool.
That's the 3rd one.
Just to troll people, they'd be like, "What the?" Well, I have a very similar pick me up, right? Because nothing makes me more depressed than really bad clip art being used for like media purposes in the church. You know, we have this history of like patronage of the greatest artists in history in the world. And it's like Michelangelo, Donatello, Leonardo da Vinci, Comic Sans. And so like, or some clip art, like word clip art. So instead, we have some really great sources. And one source that I just found out about is a website called One Secret Mission. So OSM, One Secret Mission, trademarked. It's an urban Catholic creative culture studio, which sounds really intense, but basically, from what I see, it's like a place where there's a lot of where artists, photographers can upload their own. So it's kind of crowdsourced.
Mhm.
Upload their own pictures, their own art. That's really nice, really good. That other that churches can use for royalty free. So we're not going on the internet, which you shouldn't do because it's stealing and it's bad. You can't go on to Google search, like Caravaggio's painting and use it for your bulletin, because that's actually, like, you don't have rights to that unless you've obtained some rights, paid for rights. But
Yeah.
there's royalty free stuff out there, and one of the places that it's found is One Secret Mission, especially because it's a Catholic organization. So there's all these pictures of altars and the Eucharist and adoration and
Yeah.
mountains and some more general stuff, wheat blowing in the fields,
Yeah.
and things like that. So go check it out, One Secret Mission.
That's really awesome. I checked it out because I saw it in the show notes before we recorded, and I was like, oh, this is great. So I immediately sent it around to a few people. Because one thing we found as a good Catholic is that a lot of the stock imagery out there of Catholic things is, well, bad. It's just not great. And a lot of it is created by people who like really aren't Catholic, which is fine. I mean, no fault on them, but then it just means like the way they frame
they don't
the
get
right,
exactly.
or,
They don't get the theology. You got to have an understanding of the theology if you're going to express that theology in art.
Right.
And so so someone who's Catholic who loves the Eucharist is going to present the Eucharist in photos in a different way.
Right. Right. So that is going to be really helpful for us. But I'm sure it's going to be helpful for anyone out there. I mean, firstly, it's also just beautiful stuff. Like, go check it out and just spend some time looking through it, save some stuff, make it your desktop background, even just
so
that.
I found this out
Your own
because
life.
one of the couples that I officiated their wedding, and they're friends of mine, the Fletchers, Colby and Alex Fletcher. She works in a marketing department. Actually, she's kind of doing some work for the USCCB, but so she was researching, and she found their picture so like their photographer had like uploaded some of the stuff that they didn't use, that they didn't buy, so they saw themselves on it. It was pretty funny. It's crazy. She was like, "Oh my goodness, this is us." So that's how she got. And then she told me about it. So I sent it to my bulletin person, my social media person in the parish, and some other friends as well. So we got to spread the thing. So Behind the Canvas, One Secret Mission. Go check it out. Good art. Let's regain beauty. You've been listening to Catholic Coffee Talk with me, Father Brad, and our resident Good Catholic, Peter Goen. Coffee Talk is brought to you by the Catholic Company and is part of the Good Catholic Podcast Cooperative. If this episode has blessed you, you can find more content at goodcatholic.com. As always, we ask you to leave a review, a rating, share the pod with a friend, or simply pray for us and our mission. If you have a question of your own that has been percolating, shoot us an email at askapriest@goodcatholic.com, or do something crazy. Leave us a voice message so we can hear your voice. Look, you can even put on like a Darth Vader kind of like masking, like a voice masking box. That would be epic if you were like, "Yeah, this is Steven from San Diego, and I have a question." I mean, that would be creepy. We do it. We're crazy. So speakpipe.com/Catholic Coffee Talk. We might feature your message on a future episode, or we'll answer all your questions to the best of our ability. And we're not going to either or. And we'll answer all your questions.
Feature your message, but we won't answer you. Feature your message. Anyway.
To quote the psalmist, taste and see that the Lord is good. Continue to drink deeply from our great faith. We'll talk next week.